What's up, guys? Welcome to the Resars podcast with Tech and Sports and Daily Refinement. Today, we're going to talk about the perfect eBay store. So, the perfect eBay store has a lot of definitions and a lot of connotations and a pretty big conversation behind it because everyone defines it a little bit differently. So, you might consider perfect the perfect size for you. You might consider perfect Resar Nirvana, where you list and sell the same number of items. And you say when you are focusing on building your store, perfect first, then fast. So I'm actually going to define perfect as a 100 item listing habit per week. So 100 items per week, that's about 15 a day. And we want people to be able to do the listing, prep, ship, all that part of it in 10 hours. So 10 hours a week of work. And then the rest of the time depends on your sourcing. Sourcing will separate because some people consider that fun. What do you think of this idea?
I think it's a great idea and I think it is attainable. I think that, if you're listing 10 or 15 per day, you could do that in an hour, hour and a half, and that gets you into the 10 hours per week. So, for me, the perfect store at 100 items, I think that I'm going to want a very quick sell through because I can actually go out and curate, 15 items a day that I don't have to repair items. There's going to be little prep, and you can find 10, 15 items per day that are flaw free, that are going to be easy to photograph, that are kind of in your wheelhouse, and then in change are going to be easy to list.
We were talking about it before the call today. In order to have it only be 10 hours of work per week, you have to limit the testing, the cleaning, the repairing, the grading. So if you were a shoe seller and your goal was 100 items per week, your goal for the first half of the day or the first 6 hours of the day is to find 12 to 15 pairs that don't require any cleaning. So if you had that in your mind, you would skip everything except for the items that you can list immediately and go to the next store. Maybe you'd go to 3 or 4 extra stores instead of picking up items that you could clean the profit into.
Totally. And, when I was hitting the racks and, my listing goal was 30 a day or so, I would definitely skip over items that, maybe needed spot treatment as opposed to just run them through the washer and dryer, that maybe were missing a button or needed any kind of extra repair. So it's the same thing. If you're going to do shoes, don't look for projects. If you're going to do 10, 15 a day, like just cruise around until you meet the goal of finding 10 or 15 per day, which is going to make your life a lot easier on the back end as well. It's only until you kind of start scaling where you have a more aggressive listing goal that you kind of have to have a wider net, and you have to accept items that you normally didn't previously accept, because now you have to list 20 a day or 30 a day or 50 a day. And when you do have a larger store, there's pros and cons to all of it. Like the pros are that, you know, you're scaling. So, economies at scale are always going to be beneficial to a larger store. But also for a larger store, you are picking up items that maybe you normally would not pick up if you were doing this store that we're talking about now, because you have to be more aggressive with your buying since you have a more aggressive listing goal. And that takes more time.
That's right. So you can be picky and very choosy when you have the 100 item perfect store because you can manually go buy the items one at a time, look over everything. You can do a bend test if you're selling shoes. If you're doing clothing, you can have a little checklist, check all the buttons, check all the zippers, check all the colors, see if there's any dry rot if you're selling really old shirts, see if there's any stains in the armpits if you're selling new shirts, because certain items like formal wear, business wear will not sell as well with stains
Mhm.
because it's that category. And running shoes, if they're the right brand, don't even need tread on the bottom. So it really depends on what you're selling.
Yeah. And, we have the toy call, and the toy call is bogged down by a lot of research sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about it today. When you sell toys, like, you have to be an expert in every toy line. My Little Pony, G.I. Joe, Transformers. You have to have all of this information across every single toy line. But, if you're going to do the perfect 100 item store, 10 or 15 listings per day, you can concentrate only on button up shirts, or you can concentrate on like a subsection of a niche, because you just have to acquire the 10 or the 15 items that are exactly in your wheelhouse, that are going to match your setup and match your expertise. So like a toy seller, that's very broad. Clothing seller is very broad. You could be listing jeans, shorts, a polo shirt, maybe a hat, maybe a pair of shoes. Like, that's all encompassing clothing seller. But if you want to have the perfect store, you could build the business, build all of your setups, build your shipping station, build your storage station around one particular type of clothing. You could have the 100 item perfect store, only cargo shorts, and you could be the Mac Daddy, most knowledge in the cargo shorts niche. But it gets way more difficult as you scale, because then you have to sort of branch out into these different subsets, and that's when people get bogged down with the extra research.
Absolutely. If you're operating a very niche store, excuse me, you could just be, modern GI Joe. You could just be vintage GI Joe. You could pick a even more specific category. And remember, when you see a big store, this is important to recognize. It's a bunch of little stores inside that big store, and especially the bigger you go, the more variety there is. Because we could take a subsection of 100 items in your store, and maybe every item is over $1,000 on the very, very high end, and maybe those items sell immediately on the low end, because when you start scaling, you start buying in bulk, and the inventory variance is very dramatic.
Right. So, when I was on the thrift route, I had no problem $8 into 30 all day, every day, because that was my sweet spot. But now that, I do have to buy in bulk because I have such an aggressive listing goal, I can't sit here and say every single item that I get, I would have personally picked if I was going to the thrift. But because I have such an aggressive listing goal, it's hard and it's difficult to find 100,000 items per year that are absolutely perfect and exactly what I would want to get. But if you have the 100 item perfect store, you get to curate that store, you get to curate that experience, you get to maybe spend an extra 1 minute per photos and have absolutely beautiful photos. Where my store, I can't do that. I can't spend an extra minute having absolutely perfect photos doing 300 a day. It will totally cripple the entire assembly line here. So like, we talk a lot about like big stores. They can absorb cost increase. They can absorb postage going up. You get more leeway with defects or item not as described. And like big stores, in my opinion, wave of the future. But if you have 100 item curated store where you can take your time, you can hand pick perfect flaw-free items every single time, that you are an expert of that subsection of the niche, that store will survive just fine as well, because you get to pick items. And if your focus is on a fast sell through, you get to pick items that every single month your store theoretically can turn over. And if you have 100% turnover every month, and you do that 12 times per year, Jack uploaded his money multiplier calculator. If you can turn your money 12 times in a year, it's a tremendous amount of money.
Yeah, you will eventually reach the point within a year or two where you can't even spend the capital if you keep reinvesting. The thing that is the opposite of that, though, is if you're worried about adding another 100 items before fixing the 100 items that you have in your store now, you'll have a store that will never sell through, and you will run out of space.
Yep.
So instead of running out of, you're always going to run out of something, but you want to run out of things to buy. You don't want to run out of space.
Right. So would you say the most important metric for a 100 item store, 10, 15 items per day, the most important metric, sell through? Because you could have
100%.
a hundred item store, 10, 15 a day of crap items, crap listings, and that does nobody no good.
I agree with
So,
that.
but if your focus was sell through, and we saw it in the experiment that you ran with the new store,
Mhm.
from day 0 to day 74, $0 in your pocket to start. you got up to $1,000 a week profit because your sole goal was sell-through rate.
Only sell-through rate, because when you have limited capital, the biggest expense is actually inventory that doesn't sell. You
Even
don't
if you
have
have
it.
unlimited capital, it's the same thing.
I guess that's true, but in the really really beginning, you don't have employees, you don't have a building, you're doing it at
Right.
home. You literally have no expenses except for inventory in the very, very beginning. And even then, you start with stuff around the house, get a little bit of traction. But you're right. As you scale, it's even more important because now you're paying for the space, you're paying for people
Mm-hmm.
to process it.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes incredibly expensive.
Because at your stage of the game in California, that's your number one hurdle is storing all of this stuff.
And processing it is
Right.
people.
Right.
So you can have a smaller store that sells things faster. Everyone, it's easier said than done. Of course, everyone wants a 100 item store and sell all 100 every week, but that's difficult because the traffic, as you noted, is sort of capped. You get 0.2 per. I mean, it just depends on your category, but the traffic
Yeah.
is capped. You can't sell all your items every week.
No, you can't. But, over the course of 3 months, you can sell through your whole store,
Yeah, definitely.
without a doubt. And you did it with the small store, and I
Yeah,
still do it with a large store like
yeah.
this. But like, if you do pay attention to sell through, and maybe you can go into a little bit of, how you can actually figure out the sell through. Like, that should be the number one metric. And I talk about it on my calls. People ask, what do you pay attention to in the traffic tab? All these charts, all these this, all these that. I pay attention to two metrics. One, how many items that go up every day. Number two, how many items I sell per day. Those are the two metrics that I keep track of, and those are the two goals that I have every single day. The goal is to list 250. The goal is to sell 250. So, maybe you can go into exactly how to figure out sell through, fast sell through, and acceptable sell through.
Okay, everyone needs that. If you're listening to this podcast, maybe pause and get a piece of paper because I have thought about this topic endlessly. Okay, so if you want um, 100 sales per week, what you can do is calculate. Okay, how many views do I want to get these sales? So if you have a let's say a 1% close ratio, that means that 10,000 people need to see your items for 100 people to buy your items. So if you go really granular and you're really trying to figure this out, you could pick two brands and compare them. You could pick Levi's and you could pick Old Navy. List a size 12 pair of jeans in both categories for a month and look how many views each one gets. And you'll be like, wow, Levi's is going to have a lot more traffic than Old Navy or Gap because in the jean category, that's what people are looking for. So if you were to monitor that, you could figure out, okay, wow, if I'm focused on sell-through rate, I'm always going to pick the brand that has more views, more traffic, more conversion. And typically the most views equals the faster sell-through rate. This is why Nintendo items sell faster than Sega Genesis. Way, way, way more searches, millions more searches. So that's how it converts.
Totally. So on top of that, one step further, the J. Crew example that we use,
Yeah,
J. Crew above $20, no good.
no good.
J. Crew under $20, 100% sell through over 90 days. So you need to be able to capture the good brands that everybody wants, that everybody is looking for, and also be in the ballpark where it actually can turn over in 90 days. We can all list an item above market and have it sell in 9 months. But if you are trying to have, the perfect 100 item store, 10 hours a week of just listing, photography and shipping, you have to be conscious of market price, and you have to be conscious of the different breakdowns within the market price of the sell through rate per, every $10. So 10 to 20 in J. Crew, 100% sell through.
Yep.
20 to 30, I don't know, let's call it 20, 10 or 20% sell through.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're trying to turn your inventory every month, every 2 months, every 3 months, you can't have a store of J. Crew that is going to sell 10 or 20% through. You have to have a store of J. Crew that is in the $10 to the $20 range.
Wow, this is such a great example. The price sensitivity is unbelievable. So, as an example, the stroller that we use, our baby stroller, it's $600 new. Pre-owned, if you sell this stroller for 150 or less, it will sell in 1 hour. There's that many people looking for it. Most of them sell locally because they're heavy. If you price your stroller between 150 and 250, it's going to last a week, 2 weeks. It has to have a certain number of views before they buy it. And if you price your stroller at 250 or higher, you will never sell it. There's not enough people that the people who can afford it will buy it new. There's like a range. It's really interesting when you're looking at different items. There's that sensitivity that a lot of people forget. So they're like, I do have great brands. How come they're not selling? It's probably because you're in the wrong price, because there are strollers that are broken. One wheel is missing, the cart's missing, the seat's damaged, it's been sitting in the sun for 2 months. That stroller still sells for $90 because someone will replace all the parts and now they have a new thing. You have to know the different conditions, and that's so important. And it's really easy to see in almost every category. There is a price where your item will not sell.
People also have to keep in mind you can price your stroller at 250,
Mm-hmm.
and like you said, it will never sell.
Yeah.
Because you can go in and say, I'll wait for these people to sell out. But the problem is tomorrow someone else is going to list one for 175.
That's right.
The next day someone's going to list one for 99. The next day, you have 4 or 5 people that list it for 150, 150, 150.
Mm-hmm.
So like there's always new items coming on the market. So when you stay on the high side, like you're not just waiting for those people today to sell out. Like you may be waiting for everybody to sell out and you to only be the only one on eBay, the only option. And the likelihood of that is very small. So, you can price J. Crew $24.99
Mm-hmm.
and say, okay, yeah, all those cheap guys, they'll sell out. But every day people are listing 1,000 more pieces in the ballpark, in the price range. And those items are going to continuously sell versus maybe one day someone trips over and finds your item at $24.99.
Mm-hmm. Another example, Scott in the group, he pretty much only sells the Patagonia Better sweater. So he'll sit at home all day and refresh the screen, waiting for someone to price their Better sweater too low, and he'll buy all of them. And he knows that under a certain range, he buys all of them, any color, any style. He's also online looking for brand new, looking for new ones that fall into a certain category. You could literally be that specific. And here's the interesting part. When you're selling the identical item and all you're doing is changing the color and the size, he's spending maybe only 5 minutes a day listing.
Totally.
It's 99% sourcing.
Right. And that's what we talked about just a little bit earlier, that, you know, you could be a clothing expert and that's all encompassing and that's a lot of data and a lot of education that you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
Or like Scott, he's an expert on Patagonia Better sweater. And that's all he needs to know about. And he can sit on here, and the people who are not experts, he can constantly refresh the page, snipe those off when they become too cheap, already has all the information, already has all the knowledge, already knows what it's going to sell for, literally just uploading photos at that time because he's an expert on that particular model Patagonia jacket.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's the same thing for, you could do the same thing for Abercrombie and Fitch camouflage cargo shorts. There are
Yep.
certain ones that will sell for $75 all day that people will try to sell for $15 every single day on eBay. But
Mm-hmm.
if you know that market and you're an expert on that particular item, dude, I could probably list 4,000 Patagonia Better sweaters a day if that's all I was set up to do.
On that Abercrombie example, the reason why somebody lists it at $15 is because a non-camo one sells for $15.
Right,
That's why the like if you're looking through the soles and you're not an expert, you wouldn't know.
right. If your whole business was set up to do Abercrombie shorts,
Yeah.
you could list hundreds and hundreds of shorts. It's just a matter of acquiring that many shorts. And you could just sit down and your full focus be sourcing. And your full focus doesn't have to be photography and listing anymore because you already have all of those listings already built out because you're the number one expert on eBay on Abercrombie and Fitch camouflage shorts.
This is so important because Do you want to spend your time listing or do you want to spend your time sourcing? A lot of people prefer sourcing. And we were talking before the call. You said that some people don't consider sourcing work. So if that's the case, then the goal of this group, we want to help you be able to process 100 listings in 10 hours. You can spend the rest of your time sourcing if you like.
Totally. And, if you're doing 10 or 15, 10 hours should be no problem because you have your photo set up. You should be able to pick up relatively flaw-free items. Take 2 minutes to take the photograph. You could take 5 minutes to list. After you put away the 10 or the 15, after you ship your 10 or 15 orders, like that's a 10-hour work week. And if you're netting $20 each, that's $1,000 a week.
Yep. It's more actually. It's almost 100,000 a week. If you are netting, if you net 10, you'll make 50K. But I want to point out something. For all of you listening right now, there is one secret that tech does that everyone hears about it, but they don't actually implement it. And if you were to implement this one thing, your resale business would completely transform. So the point of this podcast is Resale Nirvana, where you list and sell the same number of items per day. Of all the people in the group in the morning call, we do this every morning. The people who photograph the items and then immediately list after is maybe like 2% of the group. And that is the secret of eBay. Everyone separates it out. They take photos and then long, big break in between, and then they list. Sometimes they don't list all the photographs. Sometimes they do. They split it up. If you don't do it this way, you will really, really struggle with eBay because I'll tell you, when you photo and list at the same time and you have less time, you just do less items. Everything is put away. You feel super nice. There's no piles of anything. There's no photos to get lost. You remember the item because you just took the pictures. If everyone could just implement this one thing, I promise you, it completely changed my business when my workers switched from one task one day and then a different task the next day. Or if you separate the two, photos and listing, there's so much data and information that's lost. So if you want a 10-hour eBay work week, you have to do photos and listing right next to each other. Or it will take way longer than 10 hours a week.
Yeah. And even when we talk about it, I always say photo and listings. It's one task, photo
One
and
thing.
listing.
Yeah.
So like for your employee who did photos one day, listing one day,
Yeah.
not as productive as doing half day photo, half day listing.
Never done on time, stressed out. It's just not as good. If you do it immediately after, you remember
You
all
would
of it.
think it would be the same because it's the same amount of
But
time
it's not the
allocated
same
towards
though.
it, but it doesn't work out.
It doesn't work out. And Annika is asking in the chat if it matters if it's drafting or listing. It's the same
It's the same. Yeah.
because all the data is the same. But if you separate the tasks, it doesn't work. So people will say, well, if I have an hour, I'll just take photographs. If that's your mentality, instead of half an hour photographs, half an hour listing, it's going to take you 6, 7, 8, 10 hours or never.
Right. Right. It might take you 3 days to get that hour's worth of photos at finally listed.
Finally listed. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. It can be difficult, but if you are disciplined and you do this model of, 10 or 15 items in an hour, like discipline enough to take the photographs, discipline enough to do the listings in that time frame, and then you have the rest of the day to do whatever you please. Like it's not asking a whole lot for like a humongous payoff at the end of the year.
It is, if you can do everything all in a row, it saves you so much time because you don't have to think about it. You know what to do. So I have a process at the end of the day called putting the baby away. And the process is the same every time. And it makes it so easy. You do the shower time, then you do the feeding, then the change, then you read the story, and you put the baby away, you kiss her goodnight. Very straightforward and simple, but it's all one step. If I didn't do it in order, instead of it taking half an hour, it would take the whole evening. I would have no time to do anything else if I didn't do it all in order. And that's maybe the most powerful part of this group. I was thinking about the compounding. If people in this group did your method, which is photos and listing in a row, put everything away before you start the next day, within 10 years, it would be unlikely that you would save less than $100,000 because the compounding when you're that efficient is so fast because you have so much more time in the day. I think a lot of people think that your method means working all day. You can work all day, but
Yeah.
that's not the point.
Yeah, you can. Like, you can choose to be super efficient for the entire day. That's completely an option,
Right.
but it's not a requirement. So like for me, like, we talk about photos and listing, like that's one task. Really the entire eBay day for me is one task.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you got to the point in your business where the entire day is one task.
Mm-hmm.
You wake up, you launch your drafts, that's your trigger. You get on the morning call,
Yep.
you go into the warehouse, you start shipping, we get on pictures and listing, and then you hit the post office on the way home. That's the task.
Mm-hmm.
That's the task for the day. There's no deviation, nothing changed, nothing flip flops. Every day is the same task over and over again.
Yep.
And for you, you wake up, you hit the trigger, 5 o'clock, your wife wants you home, you're out the door, you go home. You can do that for 18 hours a day. It really doesn't matter whatever you choose to do. As long as you're efficient during the time allowed, that's fine. But you can also wake up at 6 and not get done until 4 o'clock in the morning the next day
Mm-hmm.
and have the same exact result as someone that was hyper efficient from 8 to 12 and
It's
got done at lunchtime.
it's so great knowing that, like, we saw a post today in the group where someone said they didn't feel like working today.
Mhm.
I don't feel like working ever. I've never felt like it.
Yeah.
There's a
Prefer to
lot
be
of
on a beach.
there's a lot of things I would rather do than work on eBay.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
never feel like it. I like the result.
Right.
I like the result of having a store. So the if you can condense it in the one process, where now I'm looking at it, yours is where it's all one super habit.
Yeah.
But for me, it's still separated a little bit because I think, okay, the customer service part I kind of see as one thing. And then the shipping I see as one thing. And then the photo listing I see as one thing. And obviously, if they're all right next to each other, it's just one thing. But I love the idea of knowing that you can get it done quicker and move on with your day. That's why we think this idea of a perfect eBay store being 100 items listed in 10 hours. You can replace someone's income with that. Then you spend the rest of your time finding those items. And I did the math earlier. It would mean that, let's use Isaiah as our example for shoes. He can process 100 shoes in 10 hours. He already has the skills now. If he were a full-time worker in the eBay business, what that would mean for him is if he went sourcing, he would have to find one pair of shoes every 15 minutes, so 4 per hour. It didn't require cleaning. And most people can find 4 items an hour that meet their criteria of not having to clean. Now, of course, if your goals are bigger, now you start picking up stuff that needs a little cleaning, needs new shoelaces, maybe you're huge and you pick up things that need to be resold, but the brand is good. Maybe you're even bigger than that and you pick up the shoes that get sent to third world countries for $1 a pair. I mean, it's endless, but in the beginning, if you're just starting, you can pick 4 shoes that are ready to list as soon as you get home.
So, along with this perfect eBay model,
Yep.
we have Josh in the group. He does shoes. We have Isaiah in the group. He does shoes.
Mm-hmm.
When Josh posts, I finished 4 hours early today, he'll say he had a perfect day. When
Yep.
Josh posts he's 8 hours overtime, he'll have a long list of stuff that went wrong or stuff he had to do or stuff that pulled him away.
Mm-hmm.
Same for Isaiah. There's been times where he said, I'm done at 11 a.m., but every single day he's done after midnight.
Mm-hmm.
So so the perfect eBay store doesn't even need the perfect day because you have to be hyper efficient during those times that are required to focus on the eBay store. Because also on the flip side of that, you have Bo in the group who's essentially running the perfect eBay store because
Yes.
all of his listings are done before 6:30 in the morning before his kids wake up.
Yep.
So it just requires hyper focused during those times where you have to focus on eBay. Like when Josh finishes 8 hours overtime, it doesn't mean he worked 8 hours overtime. it means he got pulled away for 8 extra hours throughout the day and he wasn't able to focus on eBay. But a lot of times where people even get the time to focus on eBay, like they're not hyper focused on getting the task done in the time allowed. So like if you took Isaiah like 18-hour days, the goal that he has and everything that he has to do, hyper focus, no distraction, I know he can get that done in a half day.
Well, that was the question that I was thinking, like, how come people that show up at your office can list 100 items their first day? It's because the process is clear, and anyone who's never listed on eBay before, if you handed them a camera and said, these are the 8 pictures you have to take, and they could just immediately do it. It would take them a few seconds to take the photos, maybe in the right shape so that there's the right spacing, but they could take those 8 photos immediately. So it's important to know that clarity, and then that full focus comes from, I think it just comes from, I don't know, it's whatever the opposite of distraction is. Because if you have the camera in your hand and the items are ready to photograph, maybe it's the exceptions. Like you get to the photo station and they're not ready to photograph. That's why you get caught up.
Or like, Paul was saying this morning, he finds an item with a flaw. You could tell it throws him off his game
Yeah.
because he doesn't even know how to deal with it. Should I photograph the flaw? Should I repair it on the spot? Should I put it into this miscellaneous pile where it needs to get dealt with at a later date?
Mm-hmm.
And when you're halfway photographing an item, you've spent a minute and a half, and then you notice the flaw, you've lost that time and you have to redo a different item. Now the item goes over here in this other pile that you have to deal with and invest more time. And then when it comes back through the assembly line, you have to redo those pictures again. So maybe it is the outlier. It's the item that we're not sure what it is, and we have to figure out the brand for whatever reason. We picked up this item, but we can't read what the brand tag says. Whatever reason, people like to pick those up. Or it has a flaw that we didn't see, and now we have to spend time thinking about what to do and how to process this item that is, outside of the ordinary of what our scope actually is.
So today I looked at, because of the new priority mail change, now it's possible that priority mail, if it's local to you, is cheaper than flat rate by maybe about 20 to 30 cents. And I was trying to figure out the um, when does that exception happen? And then I realized that it only happens twice a day. And I don't want to change the system for 2 packages. They'll just go flat rate, even though I could save 20 cents by sending it with the priority, because now I have to teach the person an exception to the rule. Right. And that could throw you off because now you're like, okay, is this in the right location or not? Versus if you have flat rate anything, you remove like eight steps. If you have a flat rate in any kind of concept if you have the pictures the same way, you eliminate hundreds of or thousands of problems by taking the photos the same every time.
Right. And we talked about that on the Tuesday call. People asked if I would ever ship international direct or use the eBay ship program as opposed to the global shipping program. And like you said, they could pick global shipping, eBay ship, or ship directly. So you have all these exceptions to just, we do global shipping and that's it. That's the directive, and that's what we do. And when that's the directive and that's what you do, you eliminate all decision making, even if it costs you an extra dollar to ship it. It doesn't matter because you're not switching screens. You're not, hiring your chance of making a mistake. You're not having to train and relearn different websites, pirate ship, eBay shipping, ShipStation, all of these other things that, take a half day to really learn how to ship something out on pirate ship, or it takes, 3 hours to learn ShipStation. And then every time it updates or changes, you have to update your knowledge and you have to change. So if you could just keep it simple and have, a one flatline standard operating procedure for everything that gets done, you eliminate all the decisions. Yeah, it might cost you a couple dollars, but you can make up those couple of dollars and increase productivity.
When you know how long things take, you can also fit it into a different time slot. So today, if you guys run out of storage units, you'll have limited gate hours. That should be something that you should consider when you're picking a storage unit. My storage unit is closed on Thanksgiving, and the day before Thanksgiving, it closes at 1. So normally my lady works from 9 to 4, and today she worked from 6 to 1 and did the exact same work 3 hours earlier because she knows exactly how long it takes to get it done. Actually, she finished even earlier. She finished at like 12:30. So looking at when you know how long it takes, you can also tell your family the perfect eBay store is only 10 hours. So don't worry. I'm going to be 5 hours on Saturday after garage sales. I'm going to list, and then on Monday morning, I'm going to do 2.5 hours, and Tuesday morning, I'll do 2.5 hours. And then you get me the rest of the week. But I'm asking you guys to let me do it for 10 hours. And then they know, and then everyone's on the same page, and it's much easier. But if you tell them you want to work on your eBay business, but they don't know how long it's going to take, they're just going to interrupt you because you could go all day.
Yeah, totally. And when it goes all day, productivity decreases. And if you have an employee going all day, truly affects the bottom line because you need to have them get up X amount of listings per hour per day in order for the investment in the employee to make sense.
Yep. And when you're working for yourself, the contract that you give yourself is really important, and it's got to be reasonable. I think it's really important to understand we've never told people to work as fast as you can
Mm-mm.
because that's terrible advice. You want to go at a pace that's sustainable, and you even say not Olympic speed.
Mm-hmm. Right.
During
Because
a if it was an Olympic effort, you might injure yourself, and that's not what we're going for.
absolutely. And when people try to rush or people don't know exactly the proper way to do things, they always say, every single day, in addition to hitting my listing goal, now I have to go back and fix 10 items a day because I did them improperly because I was rushing or I didn't know how to list items, before I gained the education to do it. So, you can do it right the first time or you could do it right the second time. Either way, you have to do it right. But doing it right the first time, taking your time, cruising, not injuring yourself is going to lead you to much better success long term than having to scratch everything and go back and redo items that you put up improperly in the first place.
Eckhart in the group earlier said, slowly is the fastest way to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And I commented on the post, I wish I had done that because I did not do that. I built a big store on a shaky foundation. And then you end up having to go back and redo the foundation. So that doesn't work for houses either. You can't go back and redo the foundation because it's a lot more expensive than just building a good foundation the first time.
Absolutely. And, if you can concentrate on quality listings, perfect listings for your store, for you, the first time around, sell similar off of those listings and model those perfect listings for each new listing that comes through the assembly line, everything runs much more smoother. But when you have a lot of variant, a lot of change, every listing is different, every photo setup is a little bit different, it's very, very difficult to be consistent. It's very, very difficult to hit your listing goal. And it's very difficult to, if you're having trouble being consistent with the uploading of listings, you can't expect consistent sales. And I think a lot of people struggle with that as well. Why are my sales down? Why are my sales down? But when we list every single day the same amount, the same type of items, that person doesn't make the post saying my sales are down. But if you're listing in a lot of different categories, a lot of different types of items, a lot of different types of ways, it's very difficult to have those consistent sales that everybody desires too.
I think you're right. That it's exceptions is the what slows people's productivity down. Once you start making exceptions, everything becomes an exception.
Yeah, because like they say, you give someone an inch, they take a mile, and that's the same thing for your business. If you say, "All right, I'll go outside of my scope this time," you're gonna go outside again. If someone presents you with a deal that's too good to be true, you go ahead and go do it, and it always results in a disaster. People say, you know, I'm doing consignment. I came up on this deal or this deal. It never quite works out the way it's supposed to work out. And at the end of the day, most times you're better off just staying inside of your scope, listing items that you're knowledgeable about and that are inside of your niche and building that business, because the consignment model is always trying to find a new consignee, as opposed to just building a women's jeans business. You just have to go out and source women's jeans. And if you're building a women's jeans business, you know the supply chain of the jeans and you can acquire them either for cheaper or the easiest way possible, which is going to allow you to spend more time photographing and listing those items, building your store, doing research on the sell through that we talked about earlier, and then focusing on acquiring those items that are going to sell through as fast as possible.
So I want to clarify the perfect store metrics for 10 hours a week. So what that means is you need to be able to take photos of your item in 3 minutes or less. So that's 20 an hour. For me, the standard I have in my store is 26 an hour. And that's the goal that we're shooting for. And I think it is possible probably to do 60 an hour. Everything was set, you could do it in a minute. Most of the time is actually moving the item around. The actual photos don't take that much time. The listing part would also be 3 minutes. And what that requires is you have all the photos on your computer. You would not be able to average 3 minutes or less on mobile. Usually not. Maybe some people can, but it's difficult because you don't get to take advantage of selling similar or templates. So you couldn't really do it on mobile consistently. Plus, it's tiring to hold the phone for that long. So 3 minutes for photos. And it's safe to say if you have a photo station where you can take photos, you have the same device every single time. All the items that you're going to photograph are already there. You should be able to take a set of photos in 3 minutes.
I fully subscribe to that, especially clothing,
Yep.
especially shoes, especially smalls, especially things that can fit onto any ordinary photo station or flat lay or any sort of table that is lit. There should be no problem taking photographs of an item in 3 minutes. It's just, it boils down again and again and again how much time you're going to get bogged down by doing research and how much time you get bogged down by not focusing on the task and getting pulled away from outside forces. So the math works. The math absolutely works. We ask people, how fast can you list an item with no distractions? I could take a photo in 1 minute. I can list in 3. That's 4 minutes all the way through. That's, what is that, 12, 13 an hour, 15 an hour? Like 15 an hour at $20 profit per hour is a great income. But how come we can't do listings all the way through in 4 minutes? Well, because I have this, because this happens, because sometimes I do this, sometimes I daydream, sometimes I go on a website and look for this. But all the way through, the math works. The math works. Like, it's not unattainable. The math absolutely works.
So James in the chat is mentioning that with mobile, you can do sell similar. Personally, the reason why I don't use mobile is because custom SKU is in a different screen, which takes a little bit longer. And on desktop, you can, if you're really fast, you can finish the listing before the photos load and you can work on the next one. Although if you have fast internet, it's difficult, but the photos do load faster with the Ethernet connection. So if you have that set up, for a lot of people, listing speed is limited by their internet speed. So I always recommend get a reliable computer and the best internet connection you can. And that might be McDonald's. It's fast enough if you go there. I remember plenty of people in the group have mentioned that in the beginning.
So on your calculator that you made, that does the reseller Nirvana, how many items per day you have to sell, and then you made a new one for actually how much time you need to spend in order to list those items.
Yep.
Like, no one is going to enter into that calculator a truly unattainable goal. Everybody is going to put in the inputs for that calculator for an attainable goal, and the math is going to show it works. So if the math shows it works, you have to have a conversation with yourself and figure out why it doesn't work, because the numbers never lie. The numbers do not lie. But, people can lie to themselves all the time. But if you type into the calculator and you say, okay, I want to do 25 a day and I want to do them in 6 hours, the math works. You can do that amount of listings in that amount of time, and it might take you 7 minutes per listing, but the math works. So if the math works, but you're not hitting your output, then that means you are not working because the math works.
Yeah. So if you can do 3 minutes for photography and packing, 3 minutes for listing, which it won't take you that long with after you have some practice, and essentially a minute for shipping, that's 10 hours a week. That's 10 hours a week of work for 100 items, including shipping. And in order for you to do shipping that quickly, you would have to have an inventory system that, in my opinion, is based on date. If you don't have it based on date, you can't do it that fast because in case an item is out of place, you would never find it. So it's kind of interesting for me after doing this for a while. It needs to, if it's based by date, it's just a lot easier to find something out of place. And you can't pick without a system. And then the actual label part, one at a time, is like 27 seconds. So per item, that's only half a minute. So if you can find the item in 40 seconds, you're at 1 minute for shipping, and you should be able to do that.
Totally. And I think, you have to time your processes. You have to, keep chewing away at the one that is taking you the longest. And you ask me all the time, how long does it take for you to do this? How long does this process usually take in the morning? How long is this? How long is this? And I always know the numbers because I'm constantly keeping track of all of this. Like, I know how long it takes to put away the warehouse. I know how long it takes to pick. I know how many we can print per hour. I know how many we can list per hour. And that's why selling this amount, I need this amount of people. Listing this amount, I need this amount of people. Listing 120 per day, I need no people. But if we have to go above that, there's not enough time in the day to do all of it because the math doesn't work. So unless you have like a firm grasp of like how long your tasks are really taking, you're just kind of blowing through the day and breezing through the day because there is no plan. But if you have the proper time allocated to those tasks, you kind of move with a little bit of an urgency. You have a pep in the step and you get the task done. So, like, I know to put away 314 items, it takes me 53 minutes. And if it takes me more than 53 minutes, I was screwing around. That's putting hangers and that's putting everything away. 53 minutes. So I know for the worker, if it's taking you 2.5 hours, we have something that's going on because this is a 53-minute task. And it's same for you. If you know it takes you 3 minutes per photo and you have a stack of 10 and you look down at the clock and it's taking you 57 minutes, we need to account for those 27 minutes that are missing because this should have been a 30-minute task. And when that time leaks, when it sucks away, it's killing your business. And this calculator right here, it's going to tell you how much you're making per hour. But if you're turning 30-minute tasks into 1 hour tasks, your profit per hour gets cut in half immediately. But if you could take a 1 hour task and make it into a 30-minute task, now your profit per hour doubles.
You know what's really mind blowing? I was just looking at this. If you can photograph an item in 3 minutes and list in 3 minutes, and you have your items delivered, that's obviously difficult because you've got to build some sourcing, and some people buying for you. But it's $88 an hour once you have the item. So if you don't consider sourcing work and you like hunting, garage sales, thrift stores, that's not work to you. That's fun. When you go home and actually list it, this is 6 minutes per item. That's $88 an hour. That's awesome. That's professional level income. But that means you are a professional. You have to have a photo station and a way that you list items. But then you start making professional level money.
Right. And $88 an hour to sit in front of the computer and take a couple of photos in the air conditioner, not a bad gig.
No.
And maybe a lot of people are excited. So they say, hey, for 88 bucks an hour, I can pump this out. But if it takes you 18 hours, it's not $88 an hour anymore.
If it takes you all day, because you've also seen those posts on Instagram. If it takes you all day, you make less than McDonald's.
Totally. So like that's the constant battle. But
Yeah,
also on the same side, if we can find something in our process that we can become more efficient, now you might be at $100 per hour because you can get more through the machine in the same amount of time.
hmm,
But on the other side, you could be making McDonald's minimum wage if you extend this time into double. And at the end of the day, at the end of the day, if your output is always the same, if you're hitting your listing goal, at the end of the day, your output is going to be the same. But if you spend 20 hours with the same output versus 6 hours with the same output, you made less money on the day that you spent 20 hours doing it.
absolutely. So I think my conclusion from this is once you get the perfect store down, you get 100 items the way that you want it done. And if you want to do that twice and do 200 items, go for it. But if you start thinking about it modularly, like what can you do in an hour? It really does help you plan your day. Because if you tell your significant other you can make $88 an hour, and then you just sit around watching TV and they know how much money you're losing by not doing it, that'll help them. Maybe they'll jump in and do it for you if they realize it's $88 an hour that they're missing out.
Or maybe they'll say you're a fool for watching TV when you could be sitting in front of the computer making us $88 an hour. So
It
it,
really is the preparation of the station and then just making sure the photos are on your computer and everyone thinks that they're fancy with trying to get photos onto the computer. But if you can do a memory card, I think that might be the biggest time saver ever for me at least. Not editing photos and using a memory card. It takes time to figure out. You've got to figure out the formatting if you use a phone. You don't have to figure out the formatting if you use an actual camera. But you know, we don't have on the calculator that I made, I left out the transferring of photos
it's
because I
not
don't,
necessary.
it's not necessary.
It's not necessary. So, a lot of people do a lot of things that are not necessary. And if you want the 100% bona fide, undefeated fastest way, it's already been outlined. No one wants to do it that way.
Mm-mm.
But if you want the highest profit per hour, undefeated fastest way has been outlined. If you want to do it a different kind of way, calculate your profit per hour, and hopefully you'll be able to streamline those activities. And you can constantly give yourself a pay raise as you're able to list more items more efficiently, more quicker, gain more knowledge inside the niche, gain more knowledge inside the platform. You can constantly give yourself an hourly wage, where for a corporate job you got to wait once a year and they might skip you by this year for the raise. So our income is fully in our grasp and totally up to us. That if we get more efficient, get smarter, then we can constantly give ourselves raises weekly, monthly, yearly, quarterly, it doesn't matter. And it will pay off always at the end of the year when you take a look back and check out the numbers for the year.
So I want everyone to be really excited about your eBay goal. And my favorite advice of 2021 is work an extra hour. Because if you think about this, you're worried about making ends meet or you want to make a little extra money for the family. Can you even imagine $88 extra a day? That's so much money. That's like 30 extra grand a year. That's any vacation you want. That's any car repair you want. You can just throw your broken car away and get a nice car for 30 grand for an hour a day.
Mhm.
$88 a day extra is so much money. And I just think, that's two less episodes of Netflix. That's you can do that you can do that before your family wakes up. You can do it after they go to sleep. You can do it if if you're a jerk, you can do it at work at another job. People do that.
Yep. I think the most exciting part to me is that once you truly gain an understanding of the platform and you gain an understanding of your niche, the opposite applies as well. So right now, I have a big store, a lot of moving parts, does very well. But what's exciting to me is that if I wanted to shut all this down, I know I could make $1,000 a week in maybe 20 minutes a day, because I have an understanding of the platform. I have an understanding of the items. I have an understanding of sell through. I have an understanding of everything that I know I can make good money in a fraction of a time per day, because it's the inverse of what we're talking about.
That's right. And I think that as you get better, you make more money is also not the case with a regular 9 to 5.
No, you get better. The 9 to 5 makes more money because they make you do Bill's job too for one pay.
Yeah.
So that's the real world. So like you can either get better for yourself and your business, or you could choose not to be consistent, not to hit your goal, do whatever you want, and then you can go work 2 guys' jobs for the price of one. That's the alternative this day and age.
So here's an example. I wanted square photos, but my photo setup was too small. But then since I recently changed it to a wider surface, I can now take a square photo. The square photo requires 2 extra steps. My worker has to take 1 step back and 1 step forward in order to take the square photos, but she didn't get paid more. She gets paid the same. So that if you're on the side of the employee, you don't get any benefit. But now my store looks better and I might make more money with a little better conversion, but her pay stayed the same. You can do the opposite when you're the store owner and make changes. So it is interesting looking at, actually, even that being said, adding the 2 extra steps to each picture, which is a lot because it's 105 items. So that's 210 extra steps she's taking a day. She still gets done faster. So in my store where she gets paid the same, she can go home a little earlier. So it's a little different. I wish I had set it up like you. So for the next employee, I'll do it hourly and not based on stock now that I know what to do. But you get paid more when you do more.
Because once things go efficient, if you do it by piece, you end up working for them. But when everything is efficient, it's in your better interest to do per hour.
Yeah, that's right.
When it's inefficient, pay by piece.
I know. When it's efficient over time, it gets faster and faster and faster. They're done earlier and earlier and earlier.
Yeah, pay by hour then.
Yeah, it is interesting. Yeah, paying by the piece is for inconsistent, inefficient process because you don't know how long it's going to take them.
Absolutely. But for me, if I had to pay by piece, these guys would be making doctor salary.
Well, okay, this is great because now we're telling people exactly what they need to know. If you do eBay like the way tech recommends it, it's $88 an hour. And most people are not making $88 an hour reselling because they're not doing it your way. So they take a pay cut because they're trying to outsmart you. I think maybe once a day someone tries to outsmart you, but they make less than your hourly.
That's okay. They all come around eventually.
They come around eventually because when the robot that you've built malfunctions and you make $20 an hour instead of 88, you always come back to this one.
Yeah, but I've never made that post where the robot has malfunction. Hasn't malfunctioned in 10 years.
No, not yours. I'm saying the robot that people are building that's supposed to outsmart your system.
Right. But also, if it's $88 per hour, you can modulate that out. And now it's $88 per hour times 3. It's $88 per hour times 4. It's $88 per hour times 5, because everything is modular and everything is scalable and everything is the same.
I also want to point out that this exercise today, where we've been going over this process, is actually maybe 3 times slower than the actual way that you do it. So the way that tech does is actually hundreds of dollars an hour. Today,
24 hours a day.
24 hours a day. So
Not 8 hours a day.
Yeah, 24 hours a day with 3 people.
Yeah, because everything sells 24 hours a day.
But yeah, it's just for the sake of this argument, if you can take pictures in 3 minutes and list in 3 minutes, you can make $88 an hour after you have the item. So yeah. Now I think that makes it pretty clear to not do it your way. Well, you can't now say I'll do it my way because it only works with my schedule.
Mm-mm.
Can't say that anymore.
No.
Because
And
your
I,
schedule,
yeah.
your schedule has more than 24 hours a day. Is that why you can do it? Because it doesn't work.
Right. I think we're at about 1 minute for picture. I would say 2 minutes per listing. So we're at 3 minutes per item listing time.
Yeah.
That's where we're at.
And that is
And these people are not professionals, off the
no.
street, never been to eBay.com before to buy anything, to sell anything. It's just efficient setup, assembly line process, no deviation. Everything is already set up. If you see a flaw, take a picture of the flaw, make a note of the flaw, list it with the flaw. No decision making. You simply just have to sell similar, and you're just doing data entry for that point. You're just going to change color, change size, click submit. That's it.
And it's that's $158 an hour. The way that you do it, it's ridiculous. But also, I want to point out one thing because we have Jack in the group who has the ultimate time saver of sending it into Amazon to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
And then Frank posted the picture of Amazon people shipping. And just for the record, it's way slower than we ship because we only ship a few different ways. And Amazon, the poor people at Amazon who have that timer above them, they have to ship all different size items. It's way slower. And you mentioned that when I send you the video, you're like, wow, they move a lot. They're walking around, they get different boxes. A lot of times the boxes are wrong size.
That's the trade-off because they sell everything, literally everything.
Yeah.
But they have enough money to just hire more people and build more buildings. So it's okay.
I was just thinking about that today that both you and I, our shipping process is much faster than an Amazon worker because there's so many fewer options. So we can compete with the big guys and actually be better than them if you just niche down. That's really the key. Amazon can't compete with you because you sell one thing and they sell everything. They will be way slower and require more people. You know,
I agree, man.
100 item versus 100 items. You can do your store in 10 hours. They might need two full-time people to do it because it's so complicated.
Yeah. Yeah. If you can eliminate the complications and really, and we all have the choice to sell what we want to sell. You can sell, Rolex watches, very complicated, might list one a week, but maybe you make $20,000. We don't know. Or you can list things that are very easy to list. You can pump out more listings. You're going to make less per item, but you can run a business both ways. It just all depends on how you set up, what exactly you want to do, and then you have to build that business around that.
Yep. If we take it to the very extreme, and my last thought is from Jack Shang, the guy that ran E4 City. He was the biggest eBay seller for a long time. Every single item was first class mail, under 4 ounces. And at the time, I think that it was pretty similar. I'm not sure if all, but most of his packages shipped out in the exact same poly mailer. That's how they were able to do 16,000 orders a day.
Mm-hmm.
Because imagine selling 16,000 random items a day. You couldn't do it. They had to almost be exactly the same to do 16,000 orders a day, or you would have too many defects.
Absolutely, man.
Has to look exactly the same. So his model was we're just going to sell things that ship the same way. So that part of the equation was done. And then you get whatever widget you can that fits into that shipping, and then make sure they're brand new and you can order lots of them. And also, for the record, I want to point out that his average sale price was $7. Okay. If you want to sell that kind of volume, you're not in the $30 range anymore. It doesn't work that way. It's different. It's different. And I think somebody said, pass on $1 million profit on 43 million in sales.
Different strokes for different folks, If that's the business he wanted to build, make $1 million on $43 million. Hats off to him, man.
I know. It's so easy to say you'd pass because the margin is too slow. You'd rather make $1,000 on 1,500 in sales than $1 million a year on 43 million in sales.
It's crazy, but everyone has their choice on what kind of life they want to live, what kind of business they want to do. And as long as you build the business you want to do, the math works. There's no excuse why you shouldn't be able to get it done.
Yep. So our final thought, guys, is perfect store is going to depend on what you want to do, but the listing, photographing, inventory systems, customer service, those are all the same. The only difference is which category you pick and how you source. But the listing part, you can all hone it down. Everyone can do a listing in 6 minutes or less. You're at three. And the key is just having a dedicated station and a dedicated way that you do it. Just being a professional. Professional can do it over and over again the same way. An amateur does it different every single time. That's There's nothing really special about this business except for yours is the closest to the same every time. I think in the whole group, it's safe to say that yours is almost identical every time.
Yeah, nothing ever changes. It is the same every time.
Yeah.
Same photo setup, same sequence of photos, same listing format, same title format,
Mhm.
same, item specifics, same price points, same shipping. Everything is the same.
We're also filming this on Thanksgiving weekend 2021. Everyone don't panic if your sales are going to fluctuate a lot because it's the holidays. People are at home. So I don't imagine Thanksgiving is a busy day. Um, at least during certain parts of the day. There's a lot of other stuff. There's football, there's dinner, there's
Hmm.
family.
Hmm. Yeah, usually Thanksgiving night is a little bit busy because people are probably hanging out with their family. They talk about stuff and they go, "Oh, let me check eBay for that one." Black
Mhm.
Friday a little bit slow in the morning time, but in the afternoon it's okay. Saturday and Sunday sometimes a little slow, but hopefully Monday of next week up until Christmas time, hopefully we start rocking and rolling a little bit. And for me, Monday until the end of April, that's my busiest time. So we're coming up to the busy season for me. So hopefully the next 5 or 6 months, things are very, very, very good.
One more reminder, if it's pretty late in the year for this, but try to get your post office packages scanned by a worker because this is where it starts to get fuzzy.
Hmm.
Today, when I was driving to the distribution center, it's an ungodly amount of packages. So just it's starting to get really insane. And if you don't get your packages scanned, they might sit on the dock for up to a week. You might have a week before updates in the tracking system, and that is going to be brutal. You're gonna have to, like last year, I had to issue some refunds because items just stopped moving. They were scanned, but then they never made it there or until like after Christmas.
Yep. And it's going to be very rough. And I was talking about this on the Tuesday call. You know, we've been talking about it for 6 weeks. We need to make a plan to get our items scanned by a human being. Standing in line, waiting for the scan, that is a plan, but that's going to be a 3 hour plan coming up because there's going to be 65 people in line who don't ship but once a year, who don't know what to do. And you're going to have to stand and wait in line for an hour or 2 hours per day to get your item scanned because the busy season for the post office is also coming up right now.
That's right. Do you want to go over the calls we have each week, just as a reminder?
Sure, no problem. We also have the fifth podcast that should be
The,
dropping.
the fifth podcast is dropping on Black Friday.
Okay, cool. So we got the fifth podcast. We got you who do a morning call Monday through Friday. I do a Tuesday night call, sometimes 2, 3, 4 hours, answer all the questions we need. Michelle does women's clothing. Cheryl does bookkeeping. Jack does an Amazon Bolo call. Linda does jewelry call. Brian does book club call. We got toy call, shoe call, Jerry with the media call. And then we have all the podcasts. So, listen to the ones that you enjoy, listen in the background while you work. A lot of um, you know valuable information even in calls for other categories. You could pick up a nugget here or there, but a lot of information. Just listen in the background, knock out your work, get everything done, and hopefully you know the sales are up and everyone is doing good. A lot of people this week in the group made top rated sellers, so that was super exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. All right, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you so much for listening. We're going to do the $99 coaching call now. So we're going to close the call and then rejoin if you're in that tier. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week.